So who's to blame? And can you understand the public feeling they've had enough when they're being asked to pay extortionate bills and somebody somewhere along the pipeline is making too much money?
Well, absolutely. I mean, it's pretty frightening, isn't it, the way that the energy prices just have gone up and up and up. And we've heard nothing but bad news, whether it is Russia switching off its gas, whether it is, world shortages. It's a real problem at the moment. And we're looking at, as you rightly say, high prices. And although something has been decided already and some subsidies coming through people's doors right now, the reality is much more does need to be done. Let me just hit the bit about who's making the money, if I may. So you're right to point out that those who make the money are not the suppliers, not the people from whom we buy our gas and electricity, but it's those who are called the upstream companies. It's those who are pulling oil and gas out of, for example, the North Sea, but right around the world. And they are selling it on the wholesale market, and they are making a lot more money than they had expected. At least we've done something about that here in this country, because that part of it which we can get our arms around, we're taxing at 65%, 3 times what we're taxing any other companies. And we're also saying to them, please will you carry on investing in low carbon generation, wind farms and the like, but also we're saying, and carry on drilling, because certainly at the interim, what we've got to be is much more energy secure in this country. So we're a bit more isolated from what happens in the world as far as the gas price is concerned. The more we can get out in our own waters, the better.
Is that going to make much of a difference, though, when you look at the global pressures? I mean, that's always been the concern here, isn't it? And even with the renewable energies, that actually it's not ultimately not going to work out to be an awful lot cheaper, whatever we think.
Well, there's a yes and a no to that one, so sorry to sound like I'm sitting on the fence, but let me explain what I mean by that. I mean, first of all, we use gas for our central heating, and actually we're not the only country that does that, but only a few countries around the world actually use gas for central heating. So we've got a piece over there called gas central heating. What can we do about that? And you're right, part of that will be exposed to the global forces. But when you think that we take, we can take more than 50% of our gas out of our part of the North Sea. We have long-term contracts with Norway, and we only bring something like about 10% in of the liquefied natural gas, which is what really does get you on the wholesale market. You can start to see that we can shift our gas price and our gas supply away from at least some of that international exposure, but not all. Then, of course, we use gas for generating electricity, along with nuclear power, along with wind power on and offshore, and indeed some solar. And there's even a couple of old coal-fired power stations left. Well, the way that the wholesale market in electricity is calculated, it's dependent upon what I would call the algorithm, but let's call it, the maths of how we decide how all that mixed means of generation of electricity is charged for. And at the moment, what happens is this, is that there's a certain amount of demand in the country, and that's calculated about every half hour. How many generators are required to meet that demand, then get an instruction from National Grid or National Grid's offshoot. And the price depends upon the last generator required to generate that amount of electricity, which at the moment is gas. So that means we're paying our gas price is determining the entirety of our electricity price. Change that formula and you bring down the price of electricity in this country by about 20%. It's complicated to do so, I accept. It'll cut across a few contracts. But by and large, it is absolutely one of the things that's got to be right up there as far as the new government is concerned, because change that and it does start to change the dynamic for industry as well as for domestic consumers.
How quickly could that dynamic be changed? If somebody enlightened, hopefully, were to actually say, all right, we'll do that and we'll do that now, how quickly could it happen and make a difference?
Well, I don't really know. there's a chunk of those who are generating electricity who the change won't affect because they've got a guaranteed price. So if you like, there's not a contractual problem there. But for some of the older generators, there will no doubt be a contractual issue. We're looking at a situation in which some emergency legislation is going to have to be taken one way or another. It's a very serious position that this country, and indeed Europe, finds itself in. And Europe will have got similar types of algorithm on their pools of electricity because we were all broadly part of the same European project on greening electricity. So do I think that it can be done by edict and there'll be some consequences? The answer to that is yes. Will it take time to actually do it at a no cost? The answer to that is yes as well. So it's the easiest thing in the world to say, this is too complicated, this is governed by contracts, we can't touch it. Right now, it's got to be touched. A lot of things have got to be touched. The way that we have operated our energy market for some time has been I'm almost going to say a bit of hope, a real hope that gas would remain in surplus, gas would be low. You can't do things on hope. And right now there's going to be a lot of costs anyway, because not only have people got to be subsidised more, but also there's got to be some subsidies as well to small business in particular, as well as to large, whether that's done by changes to business rates or money handouts. I don't know. There's a lot of options being worked on right now. But at the same time, changing the contractual situation for a few generators, yes, it'll be expensive, but it can also bring a much broader benefit to this country because we've got a wrong algorithm put in place for a different set of situations. The situation has now dramatically changed.
With your pretty unique background as former head of Energy UK and, of course, in the Treasury, is anyone talking to you? I mean, is anyone putting together a committee of experts on this? Have you heard anything?
No, I haven't. I'm waiting for the phone. My number's in the public domain. But what I have been asked this very point several times, not just by yourselves at GBNews, but some other news programmes. And I've been talking about the need to change the way you calculate electricity for some months. I now start to see in newspapers that this is definitely on the agenda, and I have heard that it's been picked up by the civil service. So I am hopeful, but I'm also slightly worried that, the very people who put the system together in the first place can now say, we've got something to defend. And, that is not just those within officialdom. It's probably just worth recalling that, this is Ed Miliband and Ed Davey as well. Now, I'm not going to start throwing rotten tomatoes across the political environment, but all party politicians have got this wrong over the years. And I think party politics now needs to be put to one side. And we shouldn't have one or other, jumping up and saying, you haven't done this, and none of them did it. The reality is we don't have enough scientists in government, we don't have enough engineers in government, and we don't have that in officialdom. We did something which was from, emotional, which is go as quickly as possible for low carbon. We didn't work out what might happen, under different situations. We've got one of those situations now, so don't chuck the tomatoes. Get on with sorting the issues out.